Up close or in a whisper can make you hard, but beyond 10 feet, it just sounds like a couple of birds fighting over a French fry or something, you know?
You think you're being funny? Bill Burr thinks you're stupid, and in seconds, the whole room is laughing at you. These are 10 savage moments Bill Burr broke hecklers down to tears. Moment 1. It began with noise. In the middle of a pointed segment on relationships, Bill's flow is interrupted by an odd, high-pitched noise from the crowd. A woman yells something, but no one can understand what she means. Many comics would dismiss it or request her to repeat it. Not Bill.
But beyond 10 feet, it just sounds like a couple of birds
He turns toward the heckler, squints dramatically, and fires. What? You sound like two birds fighting over a French fry. The audience loses it. He doesn't stop there. He continues dissecting her voice, comparing it to glitching GPS directions or a dolphin trying to order a drink. Every line lands like a punch to the ribs, but he's not yelling. He's calm, surgical, almost amused. The woman tries to recover, maybe hoping to become part of the show. But Bill shuts that dream down fast. Ma'am, if you're gonna ruin the show, at least ruin it clearly. She's done. The audience has fully turned. In just under a minute, he turns nonsense into gold. But what happens when someone tries to outsmart him mid-bit? That's where the real carnage begins. Moment 2.
All I want to get is a 22. That's it. 22 caliber, protect the house. No big deal.
Bill's deep into a bit about gun control, breaking down how people always think they'll be the hero in a shootout. He's painting a hilarious picture of average guys acting like John Wick when suddenly a heckler cuts in. Some smug voice from the crowd interrupts, challenging the logic. Now, Bill could have shut him down quick, but instead, he plays it cool. He pauses, smirks, and says, "Oh look, we got a gun expert in the house." And just like that, he sets the trap. He lets the guy talk a little, gives him just enough rope. Then, boom! Bill drops a sarcastic fantasy where the heckler's in a shootout with a robber using a .22 caliber pistol, holding it sideways like it's a movie. He mimics the guy running around his house in flip-flops with no aim, sweating bullets. The whole audience is crying from laughter while the heckler is dead silent. Bill ends it with, "Yeah, man, you're totally ready for combat once you finish that third beer." Brutal. But if you think that was harsh, wait till you see what happens when a podcast host comes for him on live air. Moment 3. Now this one wasn't just a random heckler. It was Charlemagne the God on The Breakfast Club. And the moment was weird from the jump. Charlemagne hits Bill with a question that sounds more like a trap than an interview. "Do you think comedy is too white?" The room goes quiet for a second. Bill doesn't flinch. He leans forward, eyebrows raised, and throws it right back. "Why do you think the only funny people are white? You saying I'm the problem? Or are you just mad no one laughed at your jokes?" Boom. The host tries to save it with a chuckle, but it's too late. Bill's already going in. He clowns the whole idea of race-based comedy analysis, saying it's like blaming the fridge when your food tastes bad. The audience laughs. Charlemagne, visibly flustered. Burr wraps it up with, "I didn't come here to join a diversity panel. I came to be funny." He walks out untouched while the host sits there blinking. But sometimes, hecklers don't want to fight. They want praise, and Bill's got no time for that either. Moment 4. This one's straight up awkward. Bill's mid-set, building up a story when a woman in the front row cuts in, not to argue, but to say, "You're cute." The crowd pauses. Bill turns slowly, expression blank. Then the sarcasm starts dripping. "Oh, did you just think the show wasn't about you enough?" The woman giggles, trying to keep the attention. But Bill's not flattered, he's focused. He calls out how off-putting it is to be mid-joke and have someone turn it into a flirting session. "This isn't a dating app, lady. It's a stand-up. Go swipe somewhere else," the audience roars. Then he doubles down. "Imagine yelling compliments during a movie. 'Leo, you're hot.' Shut up and let him die on the door like a man." The heckler tries to smile through the embarrassment, but she's cooked. Burr's tone isn't angry, it's confused, like he can't believe someone would interrupt comedy for a compliment. The energy shifts. The crowd is fully with Bill. But while he destroys hecklers, Bill's not just a bully. He knows when to stand up for others, too. Moment 5. On the Kill Tony podcast, things are always rough. Young comics get 1 minute, then get roasted. Bill was a guest and everyone expected him to join the pile-on. But then something real happened. A nervous new comic bombed badly. The host starts tearing into him, brutally mocking him every second. Everyone's laughing, except Bill. He leans back, unimpressed, and then he says it. "You really think this is helping? This is brutal. It's just bullying." The room freezes. The host stammers, unsure how to respond. Bill goes on, saying how hard it is to even get on stage, and how this format kicks people when they're down. It's quiet now. "You're not building comics," Bill adds. "You're building trauma." The host tries to recover, but Bill's not buying it. The audience? They start nodding along. That moment made waves. Bill defended a nobody on a stage built for ridicule. It wasn't funny, but it was powerful, and it made one thing clear. When Burr gets serious, it hits harder than his jokes. But what happens when a heckler interrupts Burr's own special? Things get personal. Moment 6. It's one of Burr's biggest specials. The room's packed. He's halfway through a killer bit on relationships when, out of nowhere, a woman yells from the balcony. Something about men being the problem. And just like that, Burr freezes. He looks up, face deadpan, and says, "Did you really just try to hijack the show from 300 feet away?" The audience bursts out laughing. He doesn't let up. He starts interrogating her like a detective. "You paid money to come yell about your ex? You could have just written a tweet." The woman tries to explain, but it's useless. Bill mocks her attempt at activism, saying, "You yelling from the rafters like a ghost at a feminist opera." She's done. He delivers a final line. "You know the difference between me and your ex? I leave when someone talks too much." And then he jumps right back into the bit, smooth, controlled, unfazed. The crowd is howling. But that wasn't the last time someone tried to overstep on a mic. Next up, Bill shuts down a podcast host trying to play therapist. Moment 7. Bill's on Your Mom's House podcast with Christina P. and Tom Segura. At first, it's light. Then Christina leans in and tries to analyze him, mid-convo. "I feel like your anger comes from childhood stuff." Bill stares at her like she just diagnosed him with rabies. Then he fires back, "What are you, my therapist now? You gonna invoice me after this?" Laughter breaks out. Christina pushes again, but Bill's done. He compares her analysis to a guy who's watched football once and thinks he can coach the Patriots. She finally backs off, and even her husband sides with Bill, laughing the whole way. Burr wraps it with, "Let's keep this a comedy podcast. Next thing you'll be asking me about my dreams." It's funny, but it shows something deeper. Bill doesn't play emotional games, especially on a mic. He knows when a bit turns into a trap. But what happens when the host won't back down? In the next moment, a nervous podcaster finds out exactly what it's like to poke the bear. Moment 8. Ethan from the H3 podcast looked like he'd seen a ghost. From the moment Bill Burr walked in, Ethan was sweating, nervous, trying to keep it together. But then he did the one thing you never do with Bill. He asked personal questions way too early. Something about parenting and anger. Bill froze. "What are you, trying to write a book about me?" Ethan laughs nervously, but Bill's not smiling. He calls out the awkwardness instantly. "You're so uncomfortable right now. It's like you're on a first date with a hitman." The room creaks. Bill keeps going. "You're talking like I just got out of prison, man." Relax. Ethan fumbles through the rest of the interview. Afterward, he admitted publicly that the experience sent him into therapy. For real. It was that intense. But that's the Burr effect. He doesn't raise his voice. He raises your anxiety. Still, even podcast drama doesn't compare to the time a celebrity went too far and mentioned Bill's kid. That's when it got real. Moment 9. It was meant to be a friendly sit-down. Howie Mandel invites Bill onto his show, and for a while it's smooth. But then, Howie, trying to be funny, makes a cheap joke about Bill's daughter. Instantly, the mood changes. Bill leans forward, no smile, and says, "Hey man, don't bring my kid into your stand-up bit." Howie tries to laugh it off, but it's not working. Burr keeps his tone calm but sharp, saying, "You've been doing this long enough to know what the line is." The air gets thick. Even the crew goes quiet. Burr doesn't yell. He doesn't cuss. He just lets the silence crush the moment. Howie changes the topic, but the damage is done. Burr's message was loud and clear. Family is off limits. That moment went viral, not for being funny, but for being real. And Burr showed once again that he's fearless, even with celebrities. But his most iconic takedown? It wasn't one person, it was an entire city. And they tried to eat him alive. Moment 10. The Opie and Anthony comedy tour stops in Philadelphia. The crowd is drunk, angry, and has already booed multiple comics off stage. Then Burr steps up. He gets booed almost instantly. But instead of backing down, Bill decides to go scorched earth. For 7 straight minutes, he goes off on the entire city. No script, no fear. You're gonna boo me? In a city that worships a fake boxer? He trashes their sports teams, their history, their food, and their accents. He yells, "I've got 6 minutes left, and I'm using every second to roast this garbage city." The crowd slowly turns from hate to shock to laughter. By the end, they're cheering. Burr didn't just survive, he conquered. That roast is now legendary. A stand-up moment so iconic, it changed his career forever. Because in that chaos, Burr proved what we all knew. He's not afraid of anyone, not fans, not hosts, not whole cities. So what does it take to make an entire crowd cry and still come back for more? Bill Burr doesn't hold back, and that's why we find him incredible. If you enjoyed the chaos, like, subscribe, and drop your favorite moment in the comments. And share this with someone who thinks they can out-roast Burr. They can't. Thanks for watching.